Now, if we talk to each other in person, you probably thought to yourself, Ace, you're probably a good boxer. You definitely can mix it up. Well, you probably actually didn't think that if you saw me. But I do love watching UFC. I do love watching boxing. And I love watching interesting fights. And Donald Trump versus Jerome Powell could definitely be an interesting one. But I can tell you right now who's going to win. And that is...
From the capital city of the United States of America, Washington, D.C., ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble!
And the answer is no one, because Powell is really almost at the end of his term. He's got about a year left. And Trump can put all the pressure he wants on Powell to lower the Fed funds rate, lowering interest rates, but it's not going to happen. And can Trump actually remove Powell from office? So can Trump fire Jerome Powell? We're going to skip right to the answer, which is legally the answer is complicated and untested, but no Fed chair has ever been removed by a president, and it would have to be interpreted as misconduct, incapacity, and not policy disagreements, which means that even if Trump were to try to fire Jerome Powell or remove Jerome Powell, it would be a political process. And with him having a year left in his term and everything going on right now, it's not going to matter. So the pressure that Trump puts on Powell, which all political parties put pressure on the Fed is apart. And Powell announced recently that he might be put in a tight spot, right? Inflation's falling, which would make him typically increase rates when you have lower inflation. But if unemployment's going up, GDP's going down, right, and at the same time there's all this uncertainty with tariffs, the Fed is not sure what to do. And we really don't want the Fed to be controlled by a political party. Now, that's a conversation for a different video. But it is better that the monetary policy, the Fed, is apart from whoever's in power. Now, why does Trump really want to lower interest rates, especially over the next 12 months? And the answer is because Janet Yellen, the previous Fed chairs, took our long-term debt, our national debt, and put it in short term. And that's important because when rates were low, why did everybody refinance their houses when rates were really low? Is because when terms are in your favor, you typically want to make that long-term debt. And regardless of what her intentions were at the time, most people believe it was a very bad decision to roll this debt over. And now we have really high rates. And Scott Bessent is going to have to, which is the Treasury Secretary, is going to have to refinance this debt this year. And they want lower rates to do that, which is good for the country, right? We want to take this debt, just like we did when people refinance their house when rates are really low, and actually move that debt to long-term debt instead of having to refinance it every year. So we shall see. But I can tell you that Trump cannot remove Powell, not easily, and it's not going to be a factor. But the Fed is going to be a factor because what interest rates do are definitely going to affect the housing market. And we have Zillow updating their outlook on housing. So Zillow just turned housing bear. Just look at its updated forecast. So Zillow projects that U.S. home prices will fall negative 1.75% between March 2025 and March 2026. When we look at this map here, actually, let's go to this bigger map. You can kind of see, you can find this actually on the internet, that they have this map of all over the United States. I like to look, of course, here in Florida. And when we zoom into Florida here, we can see that, they don't have all the markets, but Orlando, they're saying negative 1.9%. Deltona, negative 2. And it's pretty much like 1.9, 1.3, even Miami, 0.9. So Zillow is predicting there to be so I've been saying there's going to be a flat market. A 1% decline in prices, in my opinion, is a flat market. And they keep changing these forecasts. And why? Because it's uncertain and they don't know. But no one is predicting a massive decline in housing prices. I had somebody call me recently from one of these videos and say I was no better than the mainstream media, which one is a compliment that someone's watching the videos that way. But two, data is just data. So I like to look at the data and then I'll interpret it best I can based on my experiences. And what I'm seeing is that it's a flat market. Zillow's flipping more bearish. A lot of people are, because of the uncertainty in the market. As we get more certainty, for instance, if rates do fall, if the Fed does start cutting rates, these trends are going to change because that's going to drive more buyers in the market. When we look at this chart that really kind of breaks down a bunch of different markets, really the top 50 metros, you can see that there are a couple that have had -5%. And a lot of these are in Florida and Texas. Orlando here, they're saying -2% year over year. But at the same time, when I look at Redfin, they're showing that the Florida market has been pretty flat. And this has been my experience because I've been tracking the median where it's been up and down a little bit, but it's mainly been up almost 2.6% year over year. So what's the real numbers? It depends on what data that you're looking at. But we are likely going to have a really, really flat market. And the more uncertainty there is, you're going to see these flip-flops, both in rate predictions, because if the Fed is not going to cut the Fed funds rate, rates are going to stay higher. And talking about rates, this is kind of this amazing loop that rates have been doing. So right now, 30-year back under 7%. As you know, last week rates really shot up. But when we look over really since October of last year, it's amazing how this 7%, I've kind of talked about this a lot, has just been a magnet to rates. So every time something happens and we fall below, we just have been circling around the 7.125, the 6.875% rate. And that's where we're at again. So the real questions are this, and this is the data that I really want to pay attention to. What is the Fed going to do? Because tariffs can be considered inflationary, but our last CPI came lower. We are getting close to the Fed's 2% target. Unemployment, they're looking at that. Is that going to tick up? Is GDP, are we going to get slow growth? And what's going to happen between China and the US? Till those things play out, especially what happens between China and the US, you are going to have this uncertainty, and there's going to be a lot of change and predictions of what's going to happen. So is the real estate market going to have this big crash? I can almost say 100% no. We're not going to have a big crash in real estate. Could we get a little bit of depreciation or a little bit of appreciation? Definitely. 1 to 2% either way, definitely. And if you're a buyer watching this, trying to time the real estate market is not going to happen because it's time in the market, not timing the market. And right as they're like come back and say, oh, now we're going to have 3% appreciation again, you're like, oh God, I should have bought. So if you can buy and if you qualify, there are more choices now, sellers doing more, and if rates fall, you get a lower payment, but you also get less choices and less seller concessions, and there's also more first-time home buyer programs. So don't try to time the market. Get good advice if you have any questions, or if you're a real estate agent thinking like, what are the special programs for buyers right now? Reach out to me. Focus on your daily success plan. I love looking at the market, but it makes no difference. Real estate agents are crushing it right now. If you're not one of them, figure out how to be one of them, or create a daily success plan that'll make that happen. This is Race Robinson, your favorite Florida mortgage broker. We're going to keep watching all the data. As more information becomes available that moves the market, as always, I'm going to cover right here. Have a great day, great week, and I'll talk to you soon.